Hello, it's been a minute. This is let's see. Let's see what week it is and what book it is I'm on here. I think I know, but I'll look it up to be sure. Yes, there we go. Let's see now. Yes, week 50, 60, book 60. And this book is a little bit edgy. Um, and I'll give a trigger warning before I even start anything here that if you are triggered by essay, this is probably not a good book for you. Um, it is a memoir of someone who was uh, in the inner circle of Jeffrey Epstein's world for about 2 to 3 years. So just be aware that there is some very explicit content in places, I guess, to ground the reality of what she's talking about so that later other people can't come around and say that it's all fake. It's not fake. Um, what I'm talking about here is Nobody's Girl by Virginia Roberts Giuffre. I can't pronounce her last name, so I'm just going to call her Virginia because I'm terrible with names like that. But anyway, it details her story from growing up in an abusive childhood, and the abuse started when she was as young as 6 or 7, and continued on into her young teenage years when she was put in juvie. And the juvie she went to kind of sounds like something out of Dickens. It's horrendously bad, horrendously bad. It was abusive in its own way. And she escaped from juvie and into the clutches of adult predators, eventually winding up in the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Um, Now, for those who want, the political salacious details, I can tell you right now that although she seems to have met Donald Trump, she did not, at least in this book, she does not give any account of any contact with him, even in the presence of Epstein, much less in the context of the sexual predation. And the same thing is pretty much true of Bill Clinton. She saw Bill Clinton. Not sure if she talked to him or not, but she saw Bill Clinton a couple of times in Epstein's presence, but never ever in relationship to the sexual abuse. So, just get that out of the way immediately. That if you're looking for political fodder for whatever side you're on of that, forget it. There isn't anything here for that, which is fine because she's just detailing what she experienced from the years about 2000 to 2003, I believe, um, in that experience. Now, this book was published, I believe, in October, and sometime last year, after finishing this memoir, she committed suicide. Another topic that is heavy for YouTube, unfortunately. And she wanted this book to be published. It's hard to talk about because of the topic that she deals with. So, I'm not going to go into detail here for obvious reasons. And all I could tell you is that if you want to know how Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell managed to pick up young women and how they managed to groom them and train them into this life, and then how they started trafficking them, you will get all the details that are necessary to understand that process. She definitely delves into that. The second half of the book, honestly, is the better part and the more interesting part because that's where she deals with PTSD, and that's where she deals with the fallout and the various legal machinations and how this has affected her life long term. To be honest, reading the first half, you may think, oh, did this really happen? Is she making this up? Is she exaggerating? Reading the second half pretty much leaves you with no doubt because it is her experiences are corroborated by the way in which it affects her life and the way it becomes an issue and invades every aspect of her life. Um, yeah, this is a good book. It's a difficult book. Um, I don't really have much to say other than the obvious, except I will say this, is that think about this for a minute. Epstein surrounded himself with the rich and the powerful, the political elite. He surrounded himself with CEOs and with the intellectual giants, professors at Harvard and whatnot. He gave money to many scientific endeavors. And the reason why he did this is because he was desperate for validation. And he also used this to have camouflage and perhaps blackmail material. He would invite these people to his island. And on his island, whether or not you were involved in the essay directly, there were young women walking around, either naked or topless, all over the place, as a common feature. And if you were around Epstein for any degree of time, you knew he had an interest in young women. It wasn't like a surprise or an unusual thing. It was pretty obvious, apparently, being around him. Um, his homes were full of sexualized images, some of them what might be called artistic, others of them straightly pornographic, some of them straightly illegal. Just depends on which ones we're talking about. This was a obvious lifestyle choice that he had made living this way. And okay, so someone gets into his orbit once, sees who he is, realizes he's creepy, and gets the hell away from him. There are a lot of people who did that. A lot of people. Someone who gets into his orbit gets a grant from him, gets money from him, and therefore keeps him on as a person of interest because he gives them money. There are many people who did that. People who got into his orbit and began to associate with him and became involved in his trafficking ring. There were people who did that. And the problem is, without looking deeply, we don't know who did or didn't do these things. So he's associated with people like Bill Gates. He's associated with people like Stephen Hawking. He's associated with people like Prince Andrew and of course Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. And so all of these people and many 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 others who are in his circle, we have no idea. Like one of the very famous pictures that of her of Virginia that got Maxwell in some hot water because it demonstrated that she lied. It was a picture of, in fact, I can show it to you because it's in here. It's a picture of Naomi Campbell at an Epstein event. Now, I want to be perfectly as clear as I can be here that right there is absolutely no accusation of any kind that Naomi Campbell knew anything wrong or did anything wrong. Nothing, no, absolutely no accusation of that kind. But that's an example of somebody who many people may say guilt by association. Steven Pinker went to a party and had some short association with Epstein. Pinker has said that he found the guy creepy and got away from him as soon as he could. Uh, but that's the thing. Almost everyone rich and powerful in those kinds of circles was aware of Epstein, and many of them were around him, and some of those around him were involved. And where those boundaries are, we don't know. And let's look at someone else, Harvey Weinstein. Same kind of deal. It was a well known rumor in Hollywood what he did in order to cast these women in these movies. And the deal that was made is something that a lot of actresses knew about. Um, and it was a big rumor. So there are many rich and powerful people who, in one way or another, associate with Harvey Weinstein. And then let's look at Sean Combs, P. Diddy. A lot of people were associated with him and went to those parties. So we have three very high profile sexual predators. And many of the rich and powerful in the world, and nearly all of them in America, are associated with one or another of these people. Now, bear in mind, association does not mean guilt. Some of these people were unaware of what was going on, truly unaware. Some of them became aware of her creepiness and got the hell away from them. Some of them knew about the creepiness and didn't care. Some of them knew about the creepiness and literally just looked the other way for their own benefit. And some of them participated. And we have no idea where those boundaries are. And that's the sad thing and the scary thing is based on what Giuffre says and based on what we've seen with the Epstein files and other things, after all, these people who have done these kinds of things, lying and dissimulating and even doing criminal acts to protect themselves, is not unreasonable considering the stigma that would attach to them if their involvement in this kind of behavior was known. So their denials are not worth very much if they don't have evidence of their lack of involvement. A lot of people whose character we think we know, we don't know. For example, Bill Cosby. For example, back in the day, Michael Jackson. Um, it's a sad, sad, sad state of affairs. But where do we fix this? How do we fix this? Well, the only thing we can do that we're not doing now is listen. Listen and believe the women and the children when they say these things. Listen and believe. That's all we have to do. Change the burden onto the rich and powerful. What they do constantly is they say that these women were already sexualized, that they were already prostitutes, they're already in this life and this kind of thing. And even when that is true, step back and think. They're saying it's okay to essay somebody who is underage because that person has already been essayed in the past. That doesn't work. That is illogical. That is crazy. But that is the kind of logic that they will use to try to justify what they do. And if you don't step back and think about it for a second, it may seem convincing. Oh, well, she came on to him. She knew that he was rich and powerful, and she wanted to, have these trips to Paris and have this fancy jewelry and have these fancy clothes. And so she came on to him for that reason. Maybe so. But when she is underage, that doesn't matter. And his involvement matters because he didn't suddenly give up his consent because she was interested. He didn't suddenly give up his agency because she was interested. He had agency. He had the ability to consent too. He was involved. And he could have said no, walked away at any point if he thought it was something he didn't want to be involved in. So his choosing to be involved, no matter what she did, no matter how she responded, no matter what her prior experiences were, is still statutory rape. It makes zero difference. And that's what we have to get back to. We have to get back to listening and believing the children and listening and believing the women who are involved. So I know this is a heavy topic, and I've skirted around a lot of difficult issues. Hopefully, things will improve. And we do see some sign that it is. Um, Prince Andrew and Maxwell being in jail is a start. Uh, Jeffrey Epstein never really had his day in court because of his death. Virginia believed that it was possible that he was killed because the Epstein she knew was a very narcissistic man, and doing something like taking his life would not necessarily been in his ball of tricks, basically. But hard to know, hard to know. So we are where we are, and let's not let her life and her work go to waste. Let's continue to hold the rich and powerful accountable for what they've done. It goes well beyond Epstein and Maxwell. And by the way, if you didn't know, there are at least 200 known victims of Epstein's sex trafficking ring, and there are numerous documentaries and numerous caches of testimony out there. The idea that we need the Epstein files to proceed beyond where we are right now is not exactly true. There is a lot of evidence out there that has not been fully legal implications has not been fully dealt with. So yeah, the Epstein files would be a start. The Epstein files would be a help. But as a matter of fact, we have a lot of information already that is actively being ignored or shoved aside. The rich and powerful are very much still doing their best to keep this hidden. All of them. Not just the big names, but all of them.